Good morning, everybody. I was told that I should find a better place in which to make my videos because the light behind was too bright and I wasn't speaking loudly enough. So I was recommended this lovely little tropical garden. There's a cage full of tropical birds to my left, which is where you're hearing the wonderful sounds of these morning sounds of these lovely birds. I was thinking of just saying a few words about Russian music this morning because I've often been asked, as I lived in Russia for 15 years or so and wrote music for one of the orchestras in St. Petersburg over that period, how much influence Russian music has had on me, but in a kind of strange way, not a very deep influence, I would imagine. I grew up loving the music of Mussorgsky, and still do, for its raw power and energy and sort of the untutored way in which he uses his material, but with a magnificent imagination, incredible feats of imagination in works like Night on a Bare Mountain and Boris Godunov, which I saw twice in St. Petersburg. Wonderful piece of music. And the various attempts to rearrange it by other composers have abjectly failed, really, because his imagination was so much richer than theirs. Even the great Rimsky-Korsakov failed to understand his music. But I was never really moved by the more famous Russian composers' music, although I've grown to appreciate it these days, like Tchaikovsky and others. But the god behind my music, and probably many other music composers of the 20th century, was Stravinsky, of course, who was Russian, grew up in Russia. His music, especially the early ballets and The Rite of Spring, has a very Russian feel to it. But his music, especially when he moved away from Russia, became much more international, if you like. It wasn't music based in a Russian aesthetic, although he used quite a lot of ideas still from Russian music and Russian folk music in particular. Things like Pribautki and Symphony of Psalms have a certain Russian quality to them. But they pioneered a kind of international music, rather like Picasso's paintings pioneered a sort of more international style in painting. So, apart from Stravinsky, who had a great influence on my work and on many others, including people like Harrison Birtwistle and others, particularly British composers, I think, even composers as different as, I don't know, William Matthias and Michael Tippett fell under the influence of Stravinsky. But yes, other than that, I can't really say that the Russian music has had a great deal of impact on my music per se. But of course, working with a Russian orchestra was a magnificent experience. The players were fantastic. The musicianship was unbelievable, although one interesting point is that rhythmically it was quite difficult for the players to get hold of complex rhythms, which is another indicator in a way that Stravinsky was not that Russian, in the sense that the rhythms he used, employed in his work, are very difficult for Russian musicians themselves to tackle. And then, of course, there's Prokofiev. I've mentioned Prokofiev before. He was one of the great composers of all time, I'd say, Prokofiev. Up there in the canon with the Bachs and the Beethovens and the Mozarts, I would say Prokofiev's music will stand the test of time. I don't know whether there's much more to say at the moment, but I'm sure this is a subject that will come up again. So, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.